Welcome to Born on the Bayou Sports, a Houston sports show made for Houstonians by Houstonians. Join Tim Costello and Scott Barzilla every week as they break down the latest in Houston Astros, Rockets, and Texans news. Tim's a former minor league broadcaster, and Scott has written 2 books on the Baseball Hall of Fame. Yeah, if Javier could get it figured out, it would make things a lot easier because he was that guy everybody was counting on this year to be a Cy Young candidate, take that big step forward and help anchor this rotation with Fromber.
Since he's come to Houston, you can look at the development of guys like Carlos Correa defensively, Jeremy Pena defensively. I mean, you can Alex Bregman's, certainly I think a better than average third baseman.
And now you're putting teams in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9. Now here comes Will Anderson. Pin back your ears, let's go. So if you're Bayou born and bred, or just like spending time in the H, sit down, relax, and stay Houston strong. Hey, welcome all my friends to the show that comes back again once a week, and we are returning this week as again AL West champions. And Scott, last week when Bryce Young was benched, I tossed around the idea of possibly bringing in a backup co-host because just the performance of backups, typically you get that good 1 week spark, and then we'll see after that. Well, Andy Dalton gave a 1 week spark, so I decided we're going to bring in a secondary co-host this week. Scott, welcome to the program. Daniel, we appreciate you joining us here this week.
Thank you for having me.
Let the listeners and viewers get to know you a little bit. I know you've been writing for the Crawfish Boxes for a while, so give us a little bit about, your writing background and whatever else you would like to promote here.
Yeah, so I've been an Astros fan since 2004. One of my earliest baseball memories was the Bridge to Lidge, and then when Kent hit that walk-off home run in the NLCS. And then I started writing for the Crawfish Boxes about 2 years ago. And it's been great, and currently I'm in New York, and one of my side hustles is I'm a stand-up comedian. So if you guys want to see my stuff, my Instagram is DanielJune1996.
Awesome. Stand-up comedy is always one of my go-to ways to just unwind and relax. Say that Instagram or where they can find you one more time, just to make sure all the Born on the Bayou listeners know where to find it.
Daniel June 1996.
Fantastic. Well, Daniel, we appreciate you joining us here. Let's kind of transition to why we brought you on. We are, for the 7th straight season of full season baseball, AL West champions here in Houston. And I know this one is just a little bit different. I don't know how much of it you watched last night. I watched every moment of the post-game show and during all of those interviews. That was the first thing that was mentioned, whether it was Julia or Todd Callis or Blummer, is, hey, this one's different because it was harder. What was your experience like writing throughout the season, transitioning from should we sell to, oh my God, here we go?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, throughout April and May, I was of the view that this is a good team that's just hit a rough patch. They'll pick it up. But in mid-June, when they lost to the White Sox, at that point I was like, all right, it's mid-June. At this point, the team is what you got. So I did not expect them to go on this run. I always thought this was a good team. But, hey, since June 18th, since that loss, they've performed like a 100-win baseball team. And I think if you really nail down what people think about the team, I don't think at that point anyone would have expected that. So there's that. I think they just way outperformed what people thought after 2 months. But then, I think what's interesting enough is that we've gotten so accustomed to this and we forget like how special and cool winning a division title is. Because before 2017, do you guys want to know the last time the Astros won a division title?
2001.
2001.
Yes, correct. So, and there's some really good teams that didn't win a division title. So
A World
it's just
Series
really
team
cool
didn't
that
win a
they were,
division title. 2005 team was a wild card team.
yeah, and same with 2004. And obviously, things were a little bit different back then, but it really just goes to show that like no matter what happens the rest of the season, like the fact that they were able to come back from 10 games down and find a way to win the division, pretty handily too. I mean, they clinch with 5 games in hand, or 4 games in hand. That's really good. And no matter what happens the rest of the way, this is something to be proud of as fans.
Yeah, Tim and I have been, kind of running this back and forth on our show. So, I mean, you can go back and listen, at the time, but you mentioned kind of around that June 18th date. So, if you could pick like one move or one event that turned the tide for this season, what would be your go-to?
Yeah, so it's a really interesting question. I don't really think there is any one event that you can nail this down to. I think really when you look at this team, this was from the beginning a really good team that suffered a lot of injuries. Same with last year, but this year most injuries was to the starting rotation, and I think Brown getting a lot better, Arrighetti getting a lot better. Obviously, you got Kikuchi in the mix at the deadline. But all these younger pitchers dramatically improving over the season, I think that was a big thing. And then obviously losing Tucker really hurt. But then on offense, Bregman really picked it up towards the end of the season. There's a bunch of guys that had slow starts, and they all just kind of regressed, or I guess in this case, progressed to the mean in a really positive way. But yeah, if I had to nail down to any one thing, I would say it's our young pitchers, right? Hunter Brown and Spencer Arrighetti. You look at their whole season stats, and Hunter Brown's they're actually pretty solid. But when you look at how they've done the last 3 months, I mean, Arrighetti still. I mean, I don't think that really tells the whole story. But right now, you had to hand anyone the ball in this Houston rotation. You take out Valdez and maybe Brown. And I think you have a really solid reason to put Arrighetti. So without being too long-winded, I got to say it's our young pitchers maturing and growing into their own.
Yeah, especially watching some of the things from last night. Hunter Brown's start in Detroit really was the turnaround for him. That's where he became the pitcher that you could hand the ball to every fifth or sixth day and feel like you were going to have a chance to win a baseball game. So I think that moment right there, that outing he had in Detroit, is a really, really big one. I think the moment that you traded for Kikuchi, right? It was a lightning rod moment. I think there was a lot of attention on the ball club at that point. Most fans wondered, how did we pay that price for a guy who had performed to that level up until that point? And yet, here we are where today he took his first loss as an Astro and didn't have a single earned run. So Kikuchi has been unbelievable for this team, and he was exactly what the doctor ordered at a time where we needed it. Because just sitting back and thinking what this team has on the IL right now. Lance McCullers was supposed to some point come back this season. That never happened. Luis Garcia was supposed to come back at the season. That never happened. Urquidy never really got it going. Christian Javier has maybe a month before he goes on the IL.
Yeah,
Justin Verlander missed a good chunk of the season, came back too early, wasn't very good. And so, when you mentioned Spencer Arrighetti, this is a guy that Scott and I specifically have had the question of, should he be in that rookie of the year conversation? Because if you take out those first 4 or 5 starts where, Major League Baseball kind of ambushed him a little bit, but he did exactly what, Crash Davis told Duke LaRouche you have to do when you get to, Nuke LaRouche, when you get to the majors, you're going to get hit but you've got to like act like it doesn't bother you and eventually figure shit out. And that's what Aaron Getty did. And minus one start where, he had a bit of an outlier, and actually, one of his friends was literally like missing and no one knew where he was. He was posting on social media trying to find the guy, and then has a bad start the next day. He's been fantastic for 3 straight months. And so I wonder if he deserves, maybe not to win Rookie of the Year in the AL. There's some guys like Austin Wells in New York have had great full years, but he's a guy who should come in top 5.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's really positive about Aaron Getty is most of the time when you see a rookie that's a flash in the pan, he starts off really well, and then the league adjusts to him. But what's cool about Spencer Getty is that he started off really poorly, and he adjusted to the league. And to be honest, going into this year, I did not think he was going to be a major league starter. And I thought the reason why I thought that is he walked too many guys. I don't think he had a good third offering that was going to help him get through the order 3 times. I just didn't think he was going to have the year he has. And really, to your point, the last 3 months, you look at some of his starts. I mean, how many starts has he had where he struck out 8+ guys? I mean, that's for a guy where he had all these questions about, his fastball is good, but it doesn't like tear people apart. Walks a lot of guys. For a guy like that, to be as dominant as he was July, August, September, I mean, that's one of the stories of a year.
And real quick too, Scott, I'm gonna send this one back over to you actually. With coming into the year with basically a brand new catching staff, Yiner had very few appearances behind the plate last year. How impressed are you, Scott, with how the combination of Caratini and Yiner Diaz has handled this group when there's been so many different guys coming up and coming into the rotation, and injuries and trades and signings and whatever you have? This is a group that's done an unbelievable job from a game planning standpoint.
Yeah, I was going to say the one thing is noted about Aaron Getty that the people talk about is that he is a baseball junkie. He is, he's in the video room, looking at video of, future hitters, looking at his own video. And he's a guy that's kind of unlocked that, okay, this is how I'm going to be the most successful. And so he's a guy that, he doesn't have like the Cy Young stuff necessarily, but he's a guy that, has basically outsmarted the league as a rookie. And you got to think Yiner Diaz, and particularly I got to think Caratini is having a big role in that. What I was going to bring up, because you brought up, Tim, the acquisition of Kikuchi and how people really poo-pooed that at the time. You look at a lot of these moves that Dana Brown has made, at least in the immediate moment. Obviously, those Blue Jays prospects, Loperfido, Wagner, they might turn into something, Bloss, certainly in the future. But he has pressed the right buttons this year. And so, in addition to Kikuchi, because that's the one that people point to, what would you say is that one under the radar move that you're like, wow, that really worked out well for us?
I mean, I'm loving. So we lost our distinguished guest here for a moment, but I'm loving the Jason Hayward move, Scott. This is a guy that when we picked him up, you were talking about he was having a fluke season from a negative side, right? He was hitting the ball hard, he was making contact, but his BABIP was just crazy low. And in his time in Houston, maybe the batting average isn't great, but he's OPS is above 800. So he's kind of progressed to what he had been the previous year in LA and what he had been with the Cubs for some of his better seasons. And this is a guy who's got veteran leadership. He's a Gold Glove level defender. He can play 3 different outfield positions. And you saw last night, he makes a great catch, and as the baseball gods write it up, shows up in the very next half inning and hits the go-ahead homer.
Yeah, I'm going to be talking. Oh, looks like we got Daniel back. I don't know. I don't know if you heard my question. If we take Kikuchi out of the equation, what is like your biggest under the radar move that you think was really big this year for the Astros and Dana Brown?
Whew. That's a really good question. So I think Caratini is the obvious pick. Um,
We dropped again. I'm going to blame it on New York. But no, he was saying Caratini. That's an interesting pick.
I mean, it's a great pick.
Yeah, we can hear you. We got you now.
I can't, but no, that's I mean, Caratini is a good pick, and I think I don't, when we signed him, right, you and I wondered if maybe there was a chance that this is a guy who could be playing more than one position, right? I remember in our off-season discussions, we had looked up, hey, he's played some left field, he's played some first base. Could this be a guy who, if Abreu does not rebound the way that we thought he would, could he play some first base? Now, it took a little bit longer than we thought it would to get him there, but down the stretch, or at least in the playoffs, Scott, it seems to me like we're going to see Caratini at first and Diaz behind the dish, and I wouldn't be surprised if Salazar's on the roster as a third catcher.
Yeah.
All right, as we continue to soak in the glory here, Scott, of what is another AL West championship. Let's start to look forward to this postseason rotation, right? You obviously, you're going to go Fromber and Hunter Brown in that first series. Do you try and close it out with Ronel Blanco, who has just been wonderful this year, maybe a little bit tired down the stretch? Or do you go Kikuchi in game 3 and plan to start a potential division series with Ronel Blanco?
I'm going to let Daniel chime in. You're not getting him?
No.
Oh, so I got him. Okay. All right. So for me, if you're asking me, obviously with tonight's game, this afternoon's game, I beg your pardon, I like Kikuchi, starting any game that you can get the ball in his hands. Now, we can hope that maybe we close out a wild card series in 2 games, and they have Kikuchi start a game 1. But yeah, if in that scenario that you're talking about, I'd be okay with Blanco starting a game 1 because, he's out of all the pitchers, I think he's been the most consistent throughout the season.
Yeah, I would agree with you. He had a little bit of a bumpy patch, maybe late June, early August, but seems to have settled down here a little bit. But again, the thing that I think a lot of Astros fans don't think about is Hunter Brown's probably thrown the most innings he's ever thrown. Ronel Blanco's definitely thrown the most innings he's ever thrown. Aaron Getty's thrown the most innings he's ever thrown. It's a lot of innings right now.
Yeah, I definitely, and it's going to be interesting what the shape of the bullpen is going to be. I think that you are allowed up to 13 pitchers in the postseason roster, but you're going to see sometimes we might be as some teams have run it. I think the Rays last year ran 11 pitchers and 15 position players on that roster. So it's going to be interesting what the breakdown is going to be because you're only going to have 3 starting pitchers. So, how many relievers do you really want to have on your roster?
No, I agree with you. You're gonna have to load that bullpen up. But here's where you can get a little, playful or cheeky with how you use the bullpen, right? Like maybe you pull Aaron Getty into the bullpen come postseason time, knowing you can get 2 innings out of him, right? If you have 5 innings of good baseball from Kikuchi and you want 2 innings to bridge it to, Abreu and Hader, let's go to Aaron Getty because we've used these guys already a bunch, right? Or, but if you start counting it down, right? Like you're going to have Abreu, you're going to have Presley, you're going to have Hader. You got to think Hector Neris is going to be in there. Taylor Scott obviously, as I feel like has earned his playoff roster spot with his season. Probably King for the lefty, or would you take Ferguson? One of those. I think only one of those two get it. And then do you bring Ort, or do you bring a starter, or where do you? I think that's where the line has to change a little. We have to start looking at it.
I think a preliminary hat tip. I'm not going to give him the hat tip, as far as for the full week. But I don't know if you saw Justin Verlander's comments.
Which one? Where he said he came back a little bit early because he wanted to compete?
Well, that and the fact that he basically is giving the organization an out if they don't want to put him on the postseason roster. And to me, that I give you a hat tip for that, because I think that's the obvious play, but he could have played the veteran, I'm a Hall of Famer, you're going to give me my spot. And he could have made things really uncomfortable for Joe Espada and Dana Brown.
Absolutely. It could have been a bad situation, but I think, even watching the post-game stuff last night, Julia and JV had a nice moment together where she kind of asked him, your work with these young pitchers, is this your legacy, right? Like, are you knowing that JV's time isn't much longer and you have all this knowledge and it's time to pass it down. And you could see him tear up a little bit. You could see him take that moment in and probably realize he's not going to be on that playoff roster, but he's going to be every bit a mentor. He's going to be there to help Hunter Brown get through what he needs to get through during a start. He's going to be there to help Spencer Arangetti prepare. And I think that's what's so valuable about a guy like Justin Verlander is he's a team player, right? Like, you look back to the 2017 World Series in that 18 or that it might have been 18 inning, whichever, the long game that we end up winning, right? Who was it who came back out of the dugout to rally everybody and said, let's fucking go. You're going to go win this game right here. It was Justin Verlander, right? So, at the end of the day, this guy has always been someone who is a great clubhouse presence, who looks to be a great teammate. And I think as Astros fans, we've been blessed to be able to take in this part of his career, right? Because up until this season, JV day was a thing. And like, you just felt like you had a chance to win every single game that he pitched.
Yeah, and I really I wonder if he makes the postseason roster on the pen, because if you think of the terms of, like, we could have 13 pitchers, that's 3 starting pitchers, so that leaves you 10 bullpen spots. So even if you carried this whole bullpen, this entire bullpen, which I don't think you would still add 2 current members from your 5-man rotation as a part of that bullpen.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of having some starters in there, because, again, when you look back to the 2017 team, it was Brad Peacock coming out of the bullpen in clutch moments to save the day. It was Lance McCullers with 23 straight 12-6 bangers to close out the New York Yankees. And in Game 7, it was Charlie Morton coming out of the bullpen to make some clutch appearances, right? So I have no issues with having some starters in the bullpen. I just worry with a guy like Justin Verlander, who has been a creature of habit for his entire career. How does he react to being thrown down into the bullpen, and instead of having 24 hours to prepare to pitch, you got 5 minutes?
Yeah, that's true. So it looks like, do we have Daniel back? Can you see him? No. Okay, unfortunately, no. So if you're filling out your bench, right? How many guys do you want on your bench? So if we rattle them off, like, you're going to have Diaz and Caratini, do you want Salazar?
If you're going to have Caratini playing first base every day, then yeah.
Okay, so if we assume that, Dubon is the primary sub, well, who else do we want on that bench?
Well, somehow, Gray Kessinger's going to find his way out of that playoff roster, because
I don't know about that.
He's always there, Scott. He's always there. No, but I mean, you go around, like,
I heard Chaz may be healthy. I've heard.
I don't understand the point of having Chaz, right? Like realistically, you've got 5 spots, right? Or after you've got 5 backup spots. So it's in general you've got 12. Is it 25 or 26 for the playoff roster, Scott?
26.
Okay, so
It's 26.
you've got 13 position player spots. Bregman 1, Altuve 2, Tucker 3, Singleton 4, Alvarez 5, Myers 6, Dubon 7, uh,
Pena.
Pena 8, Diaz, Caratini 9 and 10, Salazar's 11, right?
Right.
Now, I have to have Jason Hayward at this point. I think that is
Well,
a must, the way he's swinging the stick on top of his leadership, on top of his positional versatility. That leaves you one baseball player. And I feel like Mauricio Dubon is going to get a large share of starts either in left field or in center field for Jake Myers if he's not playing well. So probably I'm thinking another infielder, right? Like a guy who's got some positional versatility. It's going to be either Kessinger or Whitcomb. And based on the fact that Shea Whitcomb made 3 errors today, I think it's going to be Kessinger for a late inning defensive substitution. Payne, that Joe Espada likes to pinch hit a lot in late innings, and that leaves you needing some defensive substitutions. Kessinger can play every position on the infield diamond and could probably play a corner outfield spot in the 9th inning if you needed him to.
yeah, I think the big debate, and I think that when they were mentioning on the radio this afternoon, is I think you really have 8 positions pretty well tied up. I think first base, you're going to see a kind of an unholy platoon between Caratini and Singleton. And so the big question mark is going to be center field. And so, do you want Dubon out there or do you want Myers? Earlier in the year, I would have said Myers is definitely the guy, but he hadn't been hitting well lately, and Dubon's kind of been picking things up. So, who would you rather have out in center?
This is all with the caveat of Yordan Alvarez is healthy and able to play, right? Because then at that point you can DH Yordan, you can play Jason Hayward in left field, you can start Mauricio Dubon in center field, and then you can use Jake Myers sort of as the Jake Marisnick type player to sub in late in the game as a defensive substitution and go to your full maximum defensive alignment in the outfield. But I don't know, man. Jake Myers has been struggle busting it for 2.5 months at this point. The batting average below 235, and it's been headed down for quite some time. The OPS is in the 500s in the last post All-Star break. Not exactly productive major league at bats. He plays great defense, but in the playoffs, I need somebody who can find their way on base. And the one thing that Mauricio Dubon does better than almost anybody besides maybe Jose Altuve in this lineup is just flip the ball into right field with 2 strikes. Like Mauricio Dubon can stick the bat out there, make contact, and just find a way to force one into right field. And Jake Myers just does not have that in his game right now.
Yeah, he's down to about a 220 average. One of the things interesting is that they said his OPS plus against left-handed pitching is 113. His OPS plus against right-handed pitching is like 70 something. So Dubon is a better player against right-handers. And so I think you'll probably see that kind of break down. Plus, they kind of mentioned the fact that you got to look at who's on the hill for your team. Framber's a ground ball pitcher. Kikuchi's more of a fly ball guy. Blanco's more of a fly ball guy. Brown's more ground ball. So do you really need a Gold Glove quality center fielder when Framber Valdez is pitching? I wouldn't think so.
That's a good point.
No, especially, I got to assume if we get Yordan healthy, he's DHing the whole way through, right? We are not going to be in a situation where Yordan's playing left field with this knee going on. So in that case, you're not, because for a while the habit was to play Yordan in left when Framber was pitching because of how many ground balls he gets. So in that situation, I want maybe someone who can cover a little bit more ground in center field because Framber's the guy in left. Yordan's the guy in left. But if we're I mean, again, we're hopeful that he can DH every single day, and it will be good with that. Then I'm probably playing Jason Hayward or Mauricio Dubon in left, and then Myers is going to be playing center. If I'm playing Hayward in left, I'm fine playing Mauricio Dubon in center because Hayward's got fantastic range too. Kyle Tucker on the other side of you has great range. So between those three players, you're pretty well covered.
Okay, so last question before we get if we switch gears, I have a feeling. There's like about 3 teams right there bunched up in the standings with 3 games left to play after tonight. Who do you want in that wild card series?
I can tell you who I don't want is the Tigers, right? On top of the fact that they are the hottest team on the planet right now, and a minor hat tip to AJ Hinch for getting that team to where they are right now. You know, if they win out against the worst team, if they win out, then they will have been playing the worst team to ever play the game. They will be in the playoffs, right? And they will be either 2 or 3 seed, depending on how the Royals and Twins play out. I don't want that team. Scumbag is a legitimate Cy Young candidate, and he shut us down one time already. Do you want to possibly start in a 1-0 hole in that scenario?
However, he pitched today. So if the Tigers need him to get into the playoffs, they will pitch him on Sunday, and he'll be unavailable for the playoffs.
In that scenario, I'll take the Tigers. Otherwise, I probably want the Twins. They've been not great, right? Like they've been knocked out of playoffs, back in the playoffs here. Like we'll see what happens with them, but I feel like they're the most vulnerable. The benefit is this series will be in Minute Maid Park, right? So take that for what it is. But I don't want the Royals. Like they've been a good baseball team all year through.
I don't know. The Royals have been kind of nosediving as well. So I wouldn't mind the team that I don't want in addition to the Tigers is the Mariners. If they were able to slip in somehow, because we just can't seem to hit them.
I don't want the Mariners either.
So
I'm with you on that one. And again,
3, I would go Twins as well.
This Astros playoff run really just this lineup with Jordan versus without is completely different, right? So let's hope to everything that is holy on the baseball gods' altar of goodness that Jordan Alvarez can at least just give us 4 swings of the bat a game, right? Like you can take 2 pitches and swing once. I just need you to be able to give me 4 swings a game.
Yeah, that's true.
You can Kirk Gibson it around the bases.
You're gonna go a Roy Hobbs kind of,
There goes Roy Hobbs, best that ever was. All right, Scott. Well, speaking of something that was not the best that ever was, the Houston Texans look like shit on Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings. We had talked previously about, Sam Darnold's not an athlete. We don't have to worry about Sam Darnold beating us on scrambles. It's Sam Darnold. What's going on? Well, fuck, man. Sam Darnold threw some dimes on Sunday. Sam Darnold made our secondary look absolutely terrible. And Sam Darnold diced us like a tong in San Francisco in the 1870s.
Well, actually I do look at the numbers every week. They gain less than 300 yards total offense. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to try to tell you with a straight face, Tim, our defense did not play that badly.
I don't think it played badly, but I think anytime you needed a stop or you needed a big play, they didn't get it.
They made plays, but I don't think he made plays with his legs. He was throwing.
He picked up a big first down with his legs at one point. It was a third down where you could have gone off the field, and Sam Darnold picks up a big first down. It was the first initial turnover was a big killer, right? The CJ pick off the deflection gave them great field position. Then they had a short field again off the fumble for their second touchdown. I mean, they had great field position, but I saw some statistics where in the first half they played off coverage on Jefferson, and he just feasted on them. And then the second half they pressed, and he gets nothing. Now, obviously, I get it. He jammed his hand, all that other stuff. But why are we not pressing? Why are we giving someone who is probably the best receiver in the league just a free fucking release and let him just get into his route? What are we doing?
Well, my question is, and I think we learned this last year, I thought we had, that you just take whoever their number one receiving threat is and you put Derek Stingley on him and say, like, he's your guy. Take him. And you should win that battle more often than not. Now, Jefferson, I thought if you had put Stingley on Jefferson one-on-one and you had pressed coverage, Jefferson's going to get you once or twice because he's the highest paid receiver in football, or at least was until CeeDee Lamb got his ridiculous contract. But, yeah, I don't know. Of course, now we got the elephant in the room, or the elephant at left tackle. Mr. the $28 million man. 6 penalties, Tim. 6. What the hell?
I have a theory on that, Scott. And again, this is full on, unsupported by facts, Tim theory. I think that the referees were told before the game, keep an eye on 78. He lines up in a bad position, flag it every time. I think they were told to make an example. Coming into this year, we were told that illegal formations would be a focal point for officiating. We saw it in week 1. They flagged the same tackle over and over again for the Ravens. Like, no matter what he did, he couldn't, like, he was lined up in a bad spot, no matter where he lined up. The TV would show he's lined up here on this one where he got flagged. He's lined up further up on the next one. He still gets flagged. Same shit for Tunsil. There are plays where he's not flagged that he's lined up further back, and there's plays where he is flagged. There are plays where he's flagged where he is in line perfectly where he's supposed to be, and he still got a flag. I'm not going to discount the false starts. False starts are totally on him. But at some point, the illegal formation bullshit, the NFL is fucking with the game. The NFL is circling guys, telling refs, watch this guy, flag it every time. I don't care how many times, kill the drive if you have to. And to me, that's what it looked like. If I'm wrong, okay. But you will literally have to show me evidence that I am wrong for me to not believe that Roger Goodell or part of someone in the head office isn't reaching out to the head of officiating and when the assignments come out, say, watch this guy, flag it every time. Watch this guy. This guy does this, lines up off sides all the time. Flag it.
I hate to both sides this thing, but I'm going to play both sides. I'm going to play in your argument here. Illegal formation is the stupidest fucking rule that there ever was. If I want to line 10 guys behind my center, that would be incredibly stupid, but I should be able to do it. You know, I could see like a fake handoff to 8 different guys, and you finally give it to the 10th guy. You know, I would love to see what would happen in a play. But no, seriously. However, what position did you ever play football in junior high?
I did. 7th grade, I was on both sides of the ball as a starter, and then 8th grade, first day of pads, I ruptured my spleen and was told you can't play football anymore.
Yeah, I had the same thing in 8th grade, except mine was a collarbone. But I was a wide receiver in 7th grade.
Okay.
You know what I did every time I ran out to my position?
Asked if you were on sides.
That's right. Asked the official, am I okay? You know, how hard is that? And we're teaching 7th graders to do that. And so to me, the problem I have with Tunsil is, okay, I'll buy your explanation that the NFL is looking for certain guys, and that's probably true. However, do you know who he blames whenever he's talking about false starts?
Yeah, everybody but himself. I did see that.
Center. He's blaming the damn center. And it's like, do you know, and Seth Payne, former Texan defensive tackle Seth Payne says, you know what they would do to you if you were a rookie and you did that? They'd give you the silent treatment for the whole week. And he says, you know, and you'd have no idea how awkward it is to go into meetings all week long and have nobody talk to you. But you can't do that to Tunsil because he's the $28 million man.
Yeah. I mean, it's frustrating, right? Because at the end of the day, he does keep typically your best pass rusher off CJ Stroud's ass, right? Like he does keep him clean. However, I could think of like 3 different penalties last week that killed drives. Like big first down, literally one of the first plays of the game, CJ Stroud hits Nico Collins on a big in route. Should have been a first down. Instead, it's a legal formation. And then the next play, CJ's pass is tipped into interception. So you wiped out a big first down, and instead you're first and deep, and a pass is intercepted. Now, on the other side of things, I saw another interesting stat, Scott. So far this season, CJ Stroud has seen the zone coverage 87% of the time. The stats show he's taking more sacks with the zone coverage. The ball's not coming out as fast. Are you a little bit worried with what you've seen so far as this is a copycat league and teams have had some success slowing down these Texans weapons, utilizing more of a zone coverage scheme and less man?
I'm worried more about the line than I'm about Stroud. Because to me, I think the big thing with this team is look what happened in week 1. We scored 29 points, should have scored more. Why did we have such a great week in week 1, Tim?
Because you ran the ball, kept them off balance, allowed you to do some different things, and it gave the offensive line the tenacity they needed from run blocking to be able to be successful in pass blocking.
Absolutely. And when you gain over 200 yards on the ground, the defense has got to account for the run. You got to put an extra man in the box, which makes it easier to find those wide receivers and Dalton Schultz, behind that front group. Whenever you're only gaining 30 or 40 yards on the ground every game, the defense doesn't have to respect the run. They can put an extra guy in the box. They can rush 5. They can keep 6 in coverage because what the hell, you're not going to run the ball on us. So, you've got 5 down linemen. Those 5 down linemen can't beat our 5 guys in the box. So I'm just going to rush 5 guys. I'm going to keep 6, keep a dime coverage. And then, sit there and say, okay, fine. See if you can find your 3 wide receivers with our 6 guys in coverage.
Yeah, it's definitely not good right now when CJ's having to work through all those progressions and he can't see at the line of scrimmage that Tank's in a mismatch, this guy's in a mismatch, and hit him within 2 or 3 seconds, right? Like he's having to work first, second, third, fourth, fifth progression on damn near every single drop back because they are able to play 6 deep, as you said. So yeah, it's a little bit concerning from that side of things. Hopefully, getting maybe Pierce back this week helps a bit. So you have just a different type of back to pair with Akers, right? Like Akers is more of a shifty guy. Hopefully Pierce can give you a little something different. But the difference of Mixon being there and not being there, this is why we went out and got this guy. And it's just blatantly obvious when he's there versus when he's not. So let's look forward to, as we talk about, guys who will be back. Let's look at the matchup versus the Jags. Because I don't know if you know this or not, Scott. There's actually a rivalry in Jaguars fans' minds between the Texans and Jags. Like they think that we're rivals. I don't ever think about the Jags. Do you?
No, and I asked their beat reporter today, and the article will come out on Friday. I have to definitely endorse his pick. He said the Titans are the team that they like beating the most. So I'd like to say I'm going to second that notion and say, you, sir, are right on the money. That's a team in disarray, but that scares the shit out of me, Tim. I mean, if they go 0-4, that season is virtually done. And that coaching staff is dead man walking. So you got to think they're going to come this Sunday with everything but the kitchen sink and probably the kitchen sink as well to try and sell out and win this game.
No, that's going to be a desperate ball club. I think you and I both agree. It's going to be all hands on deck for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Every report coming out of the Monday night game was that Shaq Khan was just more livid than he's ever been at any point in the owner. You felt like his team was just embarrassed on national TV in front of everyone. You just extended Sunshine to a big fat contract, and he looks absolutely terrible right now. So I got to think we get the Jags' best shot. But I also think if the Texans and Jags both line up and play their best football, the Texans are a better football team than the Jags.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's the one positive that can come out of the Vikings loss is that I think the Texans are coming in with the right mindset. Because I think if they had somehow managed to beat the Vikings, with another gee whiz, we made a lot of mistakes, but we found a way to win kind of victory like we had against the Bears and Colts, that we could have been, fodder for, just being tripped up by a team that's desperate. But right now, we're kind of a desperate football team. Not as desperate as Jags. But you lose this game, you're 2-2, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, geez, I don't know. And so I think you're going to get a better effort from the Texans, but it still worries me because, this is, desperate football teams can do some crazy things.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think we're going to see the playbook wide open, right? Whatever Philly special they run in Jags, right? Like the Jacksonville special or whatever trick plays that Doug Peterson has up his sleeve, you got to think they get dialed up. And you got to think that this is going to be a Texans team that might over pursue based on they're going to be amped up. They're going to be looking to force turnovers. And I think early Jacksonville is going to try and take some sort of big, deep punch early. I really do. Just try to get some momentum on their side early in this football game and just try and do something to change the way their season's going, right? They've had it taken to them pretty much every game. And so I think they come out guns blazing. I don't think they're going to lay back, run the football, see what defense gives them. I think they're going to come out slinging the ball.
Yeah, and defensively, I don't know what they're going to do because, 5 straight drives ended in a touchdown. I mean, the Bills literally stopped scoring because they didn't need to score anymore. I mean, the Jags defense didn't stop anybody. I know they're missing, I think, Calais Campbell and one other defensive player on that team. So that's going to be an interesting, look as well. Can the Texans exploit some of the same things that the Bills did?
Yeah, absolutely. Can they take advantage? Can this maybe be the big first game that we've been waiting for CJ Stroud, right? This season. We've seen him do some good things. We've seen him make plays in the big moment, but we haven't seen that big breakout game yet. He hasn't thrown for 300 yards yet. We'll see, right? Let's just keep him clean. Let's keep defensive players from lighting up our quarterback an unlimited amount of times. I'd be happy with that as a start. If you go a whole game and don't give up a sack, I got to think you're in a great position to win that game.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Scott, I think that sounds about good for this week. Let's take a brief moment to give away some awards. It's that time of year. Baseball season's wrapping up. Voters are thinking, which way should I go? And you and I, as the voters of these awards, every week we have tough decisions to make. And I think we want to clarify a little bit as this show grows and moves, which directions we're going to take these awards. Okay, so just to clarify, the Horse's Ass Award is going to be a sports-related award. The Scumbag of the Week Award will be specifically rated for people in the non-sports arena. However, they may be athletes doing things that are not in the non-sports world, like you'll see this week. All right, Scott, Horse's Ass of the Week, take it away.
All right, I'm going to go with the TCU coaching staff because I don't know how much you know about, TCU athletics, Tim.
I know one horse's ass is there.
Yeah, there's one horse ass, but you have SMU is our biggest rival, and SMU traditionally has been kind of like Jacksonville to the Texans, where we call them our crosstown whipping boy, because SMU has been the crosstown whipping boy. So what happened this weekend, Tim? On the heels of blowing a 28-7 lead to Central Florida, TCU goes into enemy territory and loses 66-42. 66-42. Now, I'm okay as a TCU fan. I could sit there and I could say, you know what? Every now and then you're going to lose a football game. But there is absolutely zero excuse for getting your doors blown off. And then there's going to be fans, oh, Sonny got ejected. It was a bad referee. No, you don't lose by 24 points, and that's with a couple of late touchdowns to get you the 24 points. You don't lose by that many by saying, well, the referee screwed us. No, you fucking lost. You got blown out. That's what happened. Now,
that's the Dana Holgorsen special. Couple touchdowns late to make it look closer than it really was.
Yeah, and guess he's on our staff now.
Oh, I know.
And it's paying dividends there on defense, obviously. No, but the secondary horse's ass goes to the TCU fans, because I'm in a couple of TCU fan communities, as I'm sure you're plugged into the U of H scene, at least to what the fans are saying, Tim. And a lot of these fans are calling for Sonny to be fired after 4 games. It's like, here's a guy that less than 2 years ago was in the national championship game. Now, Gary Patterson's recruits, absolutely, say what you want to say, but can we give this guy a full season? One more full season this year before we start calling for his head? Maybe let's not fire him until January. Can we say that? Maybe give him an opportunity to get this team bowl eligible to see if he can turn things around. Now, I will say, you're going to be on notice. After these 2 losses, I'm kind of looking at you with the side eye. But TCU coaches, so that includes, offensive and defensive coordinators as well. Dana Holgorsen, who's, I think what do they call those people?
The offensive analyst, isn't he?
Yeah, he's like a defensive analyst, I think. And
he's an offensive coach. There's no way he's a defensive analyst.
Well, they brought in Todd Graham, I think, to be like an offense. So one of those is offensive analyst. One of those is defensive analyst. It doesn't matter. They both sucked. So, the entire coaching staff, you're getting the horse's ass from me.
I think it's a great choice. I love getting mad at your alma mater because Dana Holgorsen is a bum. So I think he was selected multiple times on the previous show. My choice this week is the Pittsburgh Pirates. They DFA'd Rowdy Tellez this week as he was 4 at-bats shy of a $200,000 bonus for played a number of at-bats for the season. He had 5 games left to play. And instead of just even like putting him on the bench and not playing him because too many people would have asked, is this because he's got, this thing in his contract? They just cut his ass. And I don't know how you are ever going to expect to attract high-level major league talent to your roster when this is how you treat guys. When this is how you treat probably one of the better players on your roster this season, and you decided just to cut him. And cut him at a time where he can't be picked up by another team to be even part of their playoff run. You've essentially just ended his season early, all to save yourself $200,000. How fucking cheap are you? And what a horse's ass of a move.
Yeah, I have to say, Paul Skeens, he's got to be looking at that organization with a side eye. Because he's counting down the days until. I mean, it's like Garrett Cole. I mean, Garrett Cole, you could tell, when he was in Pittsburgh, he was just like, how many more years until I get out of here? Was it 2, 3? Damn it. And that's a team that, unfortunately, their general manager, Ben Cherington, has actually been starting to develop a little bit of talent to where they could be competitive. I mean, in addition to Skeens, you got, O'Neal Cruz looks like a really good, nice young player. You got Bryan Reynolds, is playing some good baseball. Joey Bart, they got from the San Francisco Giants. He's playing good behind the dish. So I just don't get it. I mean, I've seen quite a few pundits say like they think the Pirates are the surprise team for 2025. Not when you're making moves like this, because you're going to have find somebody to play first base. Who do you want to bring in, Tim?
Yeah,
It's not going to be Tellez.
I would never go. Could you imagine if they tried to bring him back next year?
Yeah.
Oh my God. That'd be the fastest hang up you've ever seen in your entire life, man. It is. It's insane to think that you could still opt. Like, I mean, I understand. I mean, this is America, right? Like, the moment that you want to try and manipulate your stock price, you lay off 20,000 people if you're a Fortune 500 company. That's how we operate. That's the American way. It's just crazy that it's now made its way into Major League Baseball.
Yeah, and for $200,000, which is probably $100+ million operation.
Yeah, absolutely insane, right? Like, you should be happy that this guy reached that mark because it means he played well enough to get those ABs. But at the end of the day, that's not how it worked out. All right, Scott, I think it's time to tip a cap. Some great things have happened this week. Who do you have in mind for your hat tip of the week?
Well, my hat tip of the week goes to Mr. Hayward. The recent pickup, the Astros hits 2 key home runs in the Seattle Mariners series, including the go-ahead home run that ended up being the quote-unquote game-winning hit. I don't know if you ever saw on the baseball cards back in the day, Tim, where they had that as a stat, game-winning RBIs. Did you ever see those?
No, that wasn't really in my time of buying cards. It was more just the classic batting average, home run, doubles, RBIs, hits.
That was the classic game-winning RBI. Now, reportedly, Dana Brown went to Hayward behind the scenes and told him, hey, we need you to step up because we're going to be without Jordan for a while. And so what does he do? And you referenced it earlier in the show, makes a great catch that saves runs, and then comes back and hits a 2-run dinger. Now, everybody needs to understand who Hayward is. Number one, on my Hall of Fame index, he's a top 50 right fielder of all time. I don't know if that surprises you, Tim.
It actually does, very much so.
Because he is the second best defender in right field in Major League history, according to most of the metrics. Offensively, he's always been a guy that but even back when he was with Atlanta and definitely in Chicago, he was a guy like, man, this guy should be doing more than what he's doing.
Yeah.
And he never did. But I always say you got to appreciate a guy for who he is. And for who he is, he's perfect for Houston. He's a guy that's going to hit 6th, 7th, 8th in the order. So you're not counting on him to be the straw that stirs the drink. You're counting on him to make some key defensive plays here and there. You're counting on him to occasionally get a big hit. And I, for one, wouldn't mind to see him back in left field next year, depending on the price tag. Because I don't know if you're going to want to count on Chas McCormick making a comeback next year to the Chas McCormick that he was. But if you are a smart GM, maybe you're going to give McCormick the opportunity, but you're certainly not going to count on it. So he's a guy that, since he can play right and left, I don't know if he's a center fielder anymore. He has played center field, in his youth. But as a guy, at worst, a 4th outfielder, I'd love to see him back in a Houston uniform.
I think he's been just what the doctor ordered. I think you're right. He's a guy that when he came up, he was, we're thinking this guy's the next Griffey, right? Because he's athletic, he can hit, he can run, he's a toolsy guy. He literally has all 5 tools. He's had seasons where he's put all together, and he's had other seasons where he hasn't. But I think he's a guy who's streaky, right? When he gets hot, he stays hot, and it sticks with him. So he's been a different player since he came to Houston. I think he like many guys who, when they get here, they enjoy being here. And I love it. And I'm just excited, and I hope he gets to add a second ring to his collection, right? Because that means he would have done it here with us. I'm going to give my hat tip this week to Dana Brown. Scott, I know you didn't watch a lot of the post-game interviews last night, but one of the things that stood out to me in the interview with Dana Brown is he said, like, this year he got the control. There wasn't any second guessing. There wasn't Jim Crane interfering. He had the reins. So when you actually sit there and look at the totality of the moves that Dana Brown made this season, and if we're going to take them all at these were Dana Brown's moves, you signed Caratini, good move. You signed Josh Hader, good move. You DFA'd Jose Abreu, good move. You DFA'd Rafael Montero, good move. You signed Ben Gamel, good move. You signed Jason Hayward, good move. You traded for Kikuchi, good move. You bring in a guy like Ort, good move. You brought in Ferguson, good move. So at the end of the day, if this truly is the first season that Dana Brown had full control of everything, guy made nothing but good moves. So I have to tip my cap to that.
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, I want to apologize to our guest, Daniel May. We had some technical difficulties where we had to drop him. We'll see if we can get him back at a future time because he was just starting to talk about some of the better moves whenever he dropped off the call. I'll have to say a minor hat tip to Jim Crane for giving Dana Brown that control, for relinquishing, taking the control away from the Reggie Jackson, Jeff Bagwell, well, you might call him a triumvirate if you're going to include Jim Crane in that. You mentioned Taylor Scott earlier in the episode. Another good move.
Yeah,
Bryan King, good move. And one of the things I think was, and what Dana Brown mentioned when he got hired and when they were having the opening press conferences, he talked about a marriage of analytics and traditional scouting. And I think this season has been an absolute testament to the marriage between analytics and professional scouting. I mean, look what we got with Kikuchi. They went out there, they did the scouting, they looked at this guy, they looked at his stuff, and they said, we can fix this guy. We can fix this guy quickly. So he comes into Houston, and he has an ERA under 3 after sporting an ERA in Toronto of nearly 5. So not only does it make your coaches look good, it makes the Blue Jays coaches look kind of shitty, if you ask me. But
one of the ones I forgot to mention too, Hector Neris, right?
Yeah.
Guy who has not been great in Chicago comes back home. And even as he said in his interview last night, when he got DFA'd by the Cubs, he told his agent, if the Astros call, that's the only team I want to go to. If the Astros and anybody else call, tell them, no, I'm going back home to Houston. And he said, when he got here, he said, I felt like home. They said, what are your thoughts on the Astros fans? He goes, they love me, baby. They love me here in Houston. And you know what? We do love him here in Houston.
Yeah, and the thing is that if you look at his numbers, I think his numbers here approximated his numbers in Chicago. But he had, what was that game where that extra inning game was the Padres game, right?
Yeah, where I told you we just need a little.
Yeah.
In Houston, Hector Neris has this weird ability to get himself into and then wiggle out of trouble. He didn't have he got himself into trouble in Chicago. He just couldn't quite wiggle out of it the way he does here. There's something about the water in Houston where Hector Neris just becomes a fucking magician, man.
Caleb Ferguson hasn't been perfect, but he was better in Houston than he was in New York.
He's usable.
Yeah, he's usable. I mean, he's going to be kind of a guy that you're going to have on your postseason roster. You know, that you're going to have 3 lefties, so you can throw a lefty at him at any point in time. And that isn't even counting. That's assuming Kikuchi's a starter. So, I mean, this is a guy, and to me, this is where I have to include Jim Crane in this. Jim Crane had to have signed off on saying goodbye to Abreu and Montero. Had to have done it. That's too much money for the GM to just sit there and say, I'm going to do this unilaterally. Now, GM has got to go up there and it's got to be a man. It's got to sit there and say, this is what we have to do to for this team to move forward. And thank God the owner said, do it.
Yeah. Because you know what? As useful as it was to get Abreu off this lineup, or out of this lineup, this team really turned around when you stopped giving leads to Rafael Montero late in ball games, right? Because that's the moment this team went on a run. I feel like was when Montero was gone. Yes, things got better with Abreu, but this team took off when Montero was off the roster because Abreu was already gone, and it just felt like all the dead weight was gone, and everybody who was on this team was there because they deserved to be there, and they were playing at a major league level. Contract be damned. And that goes to Dana Brown for, as you said, having to make that decision, having to take the long walk into Jim Crane's office and say, I need you to light about $35 million on fire right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Scott. So from good to bad, we go. We love tipping caps, but you know what? Sometimes people are assholes. And sometimes it's, up to you and I to call those people out. So these people have offended us, and it's time that they be recognized as scumbags of the week. Take it away, Scott.
All right. So congratulations to JD Vance, who escapes the top spot. Narrowly, but he escapes the top spot. I am going to a frequent winner, Mr. Rafael Cruz, better known as Ted Cruz to people in Texas. And I don't know, Tim, if you had a chance to see his recent Synod ads.
I have no. Yeah, I saw them last night. Actually, they're fucking terrible. We were talking about this.
Yeah. So basically, his recent ad campaign, and I'm gonna go on. I'm gonna give me a few minutes here, Tim, because number one, his basic thing is that he brings in voiceover guy, and it's actually voiceover woman, I think in this case, and voiceover woman tells us, well, Colin Allred should notice the difference between boys and girls, but he doesn't seem to notice the difference between boys and girls, because the problem in Texas is boys playing girls' sports. That's the problem. No, I know, Tim, you go to the grocery store probably at least once a week. The problem isn't your rising grocery bill prices. No, that's not the problem. The problem isn't the fact that our energy costs are going up, and we're probably going to lose our access to our energy when we have a freeze this winter, because our scumbag of a governor can't seem to fix that problem. So that's not our problem. Problem isn't like we're experiencing here in the Barzilla home, the rising cost of college or the rising cost of healthcare. No, the problem isn't me being scared.
Trans athletes. Fuck all that. Trans athletes.
Yeah, the problem isn't me being afraid I'm going to get shot by some lunatic in my school. That's not the problem.
No.
The problem is girls playing girls sports. All right, so
yes, that's what we need to worry about, Scott. Your safety be damned.
I'm gonna lay this out here, people. I have been teaching school this is my 27th year. That's a long time, Tim. Would you care to guess how many students I've run through in 27 years?
0.
No. How many students have I seen? How many students have I worked with?
27 years. Probably close to 2,500.
I would say probably maybe multiply that by 10.
Okay.
Because, we have 2,500 students in a high school. So, do you know how many I can count on one hand the number of students I have seen visibly transition in 27 years in high school, at the high school level. So how many of those are girls becoming boys? We're not worried about girls becoming boys and playing boy sports. Not worried about that. We're not worried about girls going into boys' restrooms. Kind of wonder why that's the case, Ted. No, we're worried about that one girl that one boy that might be becoming a girl. You're picturing it in your mind. He was 6'6", and he's 220 pounds, and he's like, oh, I'm not good enough to play college basketball. So
I think Ted Cruz thinks the movie Joanna Man is a documentary.
I mean, so here's the thing.
Great movie, by the way, if you've never seen it.
Joanna Man. So here's what I'll say to this. I remember a simpler time, Tim, when conservatives were against excessive regulation. That was the whole conservative thing. We don't want excessive regulations. But see, what do we have here with modern day conservatives? We have this, where we have a governing body that governs sports in Texas. It's called the University Interscholastic League, the UIL. So when Joanna Mann at 6'6" and 220 wants to play high school volleyball for the girls team, you know what Joanna Mann has to do? Joanna Mann has to sit there and petition the UIL to allow him to play girls volleyball as a girl. That's how these things work. So what does Ted Cruz do? He shows in his commercial, in the background, you see a girl getting muscled out of the paint in a basketball game. You see a girl getting spiked in the face in a volleyball game. You don't see who spiked the ball. You don't see who knocked them out of the paint. So we're led to believe, well, that was definitely Joanna Mann and his 6'6" manly frame doing it. I've coached volleyball, Tim, for 5 years at the high school level. I coached it in club for 2. I watched volleyball for 30 years. I've seen plenty of girls get hit in the face. I had one girl, she was one of my favorite kids at Galveston Ball. She was probably about maybe 5'2", but pretty heavy set. I'm not going to guess the weight because I'm not going to be mean. But she busted her butt and she got to everything. She got hit in the face. She outweighs both of us, Tim. She got hit in the face and flipped over because she got hit in the face so hard. And you know what she did? She was kind of stumbly wobbly there for a bit, but she stayed in the game and played. Did she get hit by a boy? No. She got hit by a girl. I've watched matches for 30 plus years as a coach and watching my sister's teams and watching my daughter's teams. My daughter had one game where she played against a boy who was 9 years old when she was 10. Everybody knew it was a boy. He wasn't wearing a wig. He wasn't wearing a dress.
Yeah,
he was wearing
let's
shorts.
be honest. At that, my daughter did as well. When she was first playing at 8 years old. If you're a boy and you want to play volleyball, where else are you going to play, Scott? There's no fucking boys league up here in Dallas. It's maybe co-ed. Maybe they will call it that, but you have no other choice. And I will say too, I don't know if this is a thing when you were a kid, but when I was a kid, there were at least 1 or 2 girls who did not want to play softball. They wanted to play baseball. So they were in Little League with us, and no one cared. They played their hardest, just like everybody else on the team, and no one cared. If they struck out, it wasn't, oh, that boy struck my daughter out. It was, hey, this is a girl who wants to play, and the odds are she's probably one of the better players on the team because she has to be, or else you're going to talk shit. Literally, I think Ted Cruz would have been better off if he just cut the scene from Meet the Parents where Greg Fokker spikes the ball into that girl's face. I think that would have probably got his point across a little bit better than the ambiguity that he left it to.
Yeah, so Ted Cruz is a scumbag for many, 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 many reasons.
But this week.
But for this week, there's 2 main reasons. Number one, did this, and I've said this for 2 weeks in a row. I poked fun at the whole, they're eating the dogs. But real harm is coming to the Asian community. Real harm. And how long is it going to be before you have some jackass that sees a girl I'm going to say it's going to be a male, who thinks it's a boy, brings up his pitchfork and says, I demand to see the birth certificate. I demand to see her genitalia.
Yeah, they want genitalia checks. They don't want birth certificate.
And so how long is that going to be for that happens?
It's already starting. Starting.
You have the Algerian boxer, for instance. I mean, what happened to her is just absolutely shameful.
Yeah, so, she's about to take J.K. Rowling for some cash.
Yeah, but then the other thing, as I've kind of pointed out, is that when you run this commercial ad nauseum, as they have during NFL games, what you're telling me is that you think this is the most important issue facing Texans. And that's insulting. That is absolutely insulting.
I think he thinks it's the one that he's going to get the most response to, because I think there are so many other things that he would just obviously look like such a hypocrite if he spoke to, that this is the one that he's sadly beat the drum on since day one. And he looks like he was ahead of the curve on trans hate because sadly he has been. But nope, Ted Cruz always a good pick for a scumbag because he is a scumbag. I think Ted Cruz might be the reason the scumbag of the week was invented. Early on, it was him or Marjorie Taylor Greene was heavily a part of us choosing to do a scumbag of the week. All right, Scott, mine's got a little bit of a sports flair to it. So back in 2023, it came out due to a fantastic Pulitzer Prize winning article from Anna Wolf that Brett Favre and the Mississippi governor or the former Mississippi governor Phil Bryant had worked together to defraud welfare in order to funnel money from the welfare department towards the University of Mississippi's volleyball team. Through these proceedings, a lot of things have happened, right? Brett Favre claimed in court the other week that he now has Parkinson's as a way to what I think is possibly try and gain some sympathy. But because of these filings, the governor and Brett Favre have actually filed defamation lawsuits against the journalist. And with that now, they are threatening to jail Anna Wolf and her editor, Adam Ganoshu, if they do not give up their sources. And now where it gets scary is the state of Mississippi has no shield law. And for those of you who are not journalists, a shield law protects the journalist from having to give up their sources. So essentially, if you're ordered by a court, and this is more in a criminal case. So this is where it gets really weird, is the fact that they're going to try and jail someone over a civil trial and hold them in contempt of court because they refuse to give up a confidential source. So in this situation, the attorney general, the judge, Phil Bryant, and Brett Favre, they're all fucking scumbags. You're a scumbag from stealing money from the poorest people of your state to funnel it to college athletics. It was $7.7 million. You know who's got plenty of fucking money? Mr. Wrangler's ad himself, Brett Favre. He could have very easily wrote a check for $7.7 million. He could have got the whole fucking team sponsored by Wrangler and done a commercial with them, and then boom, you got your money that way. Instead, no, he steals from the fucking poorest people in the state. And then when he's caught, instead of like fucking, you got me, what can I do to make it right? The motherfucker doubles down and sues the person who wrote the article for defamation, and now is trying to get that woman thrown in jail for doing her job. At what point are journalists just going to give up? We're at a point in Texas where good OBGYNs are just giving up and moving away or completely leaving the profession and working as something else. We are very, very close to, in America, are journalists saying, fuck this, I'm done. Because why would you want to go to jail why should you have to go to jail to protect your source? Now, this woman is willing to do that. And I commend her for her integrity and her journalistic integrity and her ethics for protecting her sources. But it's absolutely asinine that you could expose that level of government fraud and corruption and do it well, and win a Pulitzer Prize for that reporting, then be sued for defamation because this guy's butthurt? Fuck you. You broke the fucking law, you fucking criminal, and now you're trying to get that woman put in jail? Fuck you, Phil Bryant, and fuck you to the highest fucking mountain possible, Brett Favre.
You know what that reminds me of, Tim? Do you remember what happened when Ryan Braun got caught with PEDs?
I mean, there was a bit of an uproar, but I feel like it just went away pretty quick.
He blamed the courier. He said the courier must have
tainted the test. That's right.
Or Lance Armstrong, when he got caught, you know, that he played basically the same, I'm going to ruin your life, you know, for outing me, and then coming back later like, oh yeah, I guess I did it. But, you know, Brett Favre, he was doing it for his daughter, Tim. He was bankrolling his, I mean, what wouldn't you do for Scotty or Sawyer?
Fraud. Typically anything that involves federal prison. Sorry, kids. It is National Daughters Day here, Scott, but there is a fucking line and it involves a penitentiary. I went to Alcatraz. That shit's scary.
Yeah. When we went to San Francisco, Anne took a picture of it, and she just labeled it La Prison on her little picture because she was taking French. And so she didn't know the French name for prison, so she just put a "la" in front of it, La Prison. Yeah, we didn't actually go to Alcatraz. We saw it from Girdelli's Square there. But
no, I mean, at the end of the day, right? Like, yeah, it's your daughter, but you're fucking Brett Favre. You played a long time in the NFL and collected a multitude of sizable paychecks for that job. And then again, you're Brett Favre. You were in 40 Wrangler commercials, tossing the pigskin around in the mud and the dirt. Like, those paid pretty well. And I'm sure he had local Green Bay and other deals wherever he was.
what about that, like that thing you wore if you had like arthritis or whatever, that thing that he was advertising for?
That's right. Didn't he do Gold Bond for a little bit too?
Yeah, probably.
I think he was a medicated powder salesman at one point. But I'm just saying, you were a national fucking spokesperson. You don't have $7.7 million just to give instead of stealing it for people. Like, it's disgusting, man. Like, this is what's so frustrating about a certain group of this country, is that they see nothing wrong with doing this. They see nothing wrong with taking money from people who work hard every single day because they just need it more. I mean, two of the former president's sons are never allowed to work with nonprofits again because they stole money from a fucking children's charity. Looking at you, Donnie Jr. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, there's a certain portion of this population who thinks it's just fine to take money from hardworking Americans because they deserve it more. And Brett Favre is one of those people. And I don't know what's going on in Green Bay, Scott, because the line from Brett Favre to crazy ass Aaron Rodgers, you got, like, let's hope Jordan Love is just a normal guy, but it's looking like, for his sake, like, you're going to end up being pretty fucking crazy by the time you're done there.
That's probably true. You know what it is, the moral equivalent of, on a grander scale, is like you see like the people panhandling in the center lane. Do you ever pull that "I don't see you"?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's basically what Brett Favre's doing. It's like, well, it's $7 million.
No, what Brett Favre is doing is getting out of the car, taking his 9-iron, capping the guy, stealing all the funds from his panhandling, getting back at his car and putting that money in his gas tank.
Well, yeah. But I'm saying, but what they're doing is they're saying like, okay, here's $7 million. I don't see you. I don't see you who could have actually used that money to feed your family. I don't see you. You're not there. Is this good? Because it raised money for his kid and for all of her teammates. And I could see in a very extremely warped sense where somebody can get there, but definitely it makes you a scumbag. And it makes you a scumbag when you're caught doing it. When you win a Pulitzer Prize, do you think they give a Pulitzer Prize to somebody that doesn't have good sources? Do they win do they give a Pulitzer Prize to the National Enquirer when they make up shit?
No.
Not the last time I checked.
There was no Pulitzer Prize given out for the Hunter Biden laptop story. That one didn't win a Pulitzer Prize. No, you got to do some real fucking reporting, and they did. And Scott, I would even argue, I don't think what you're saying with the panhandlers is accurate. I truly think they're looking him dead in the face and giving him the middle finger and driving away, because I think they know what they're doing. And I truly think that Brett Favre is one of those people who, in his mind, thinks this money is in better hands with me going to fund this volleyball team because these women, they deserve it more. To me, that's what it reeks of. It's not even the don't look at you. It's the watch me do this because I fucking can, because I'm Brett Favre and I'm the best thing that's ever happened to this state. And it's sad. It's fucked up. It's disgusting. But it's a way that a lot of people think in this country. We're not even 100 years off of the richest people in America trying to overthrow FDR with the businessman's plot, right? Like, that wasn't even 100 years ago. It wasn't even 5 years ago that Donald Trump incited a riot that stormed the Capitol. Like, these people are selfish. They want to do what's best for them. And that's all that they care about. And Brett Favre is one of those guys. I'm sorry if you're a Packers fan and you listen to this podcast, you can like what Brett Favre did for your team. That's fine. But Brett Favre, the human being, is a piece of shit.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Cannot agree more.
All right, Scott. Well, that's all that we have here this week on the podcast. We appreciate everybody who joined us. Be sure to check out the Substack Thoughts of a Native Texan. Scott has been going hog wild over there. I got my once a week Wednesday evening, Thursday morning post coming at you, coming out here this week as well. But do not miss what's happening over there. And again, Scott has a little bit of time left here with the crawfish boxes before transitioning all of his sports writing time to Battle Red blog for the remainder of football season.
Absolutely. And for those of y'all that are join the Facebook page, because I've been dropping those articles from Thoughts of a Native Texan into that Facebook page. So if you want to go one-stop shopping, absolutely go there, and take a look.
And if you haven't checked out any of Scott's Hall of Fame Index pieces, those are really interesting. And Scott will draw from those during the podcast. You mentioned here tonight that Jason Hayward was, the second best defensive right fielder based on these metrics, right? Well, if you want to learn more about what these metrics are that Scott's using, pop into the Hall of Fame Index when he puts those articles out there. They're really interesting. Scott is a student of the game. And really has some great content on there about some players that you haven't thought about in a long time. He and I had a nice, fun discussion about Hideki Matsui yesterday. Just as like, man, I want to talk about Hideki Matsui. So if you haven't checked out any of the Hall of Fame Index pieces, please hop on the Facebook page and do so. Well, that's going to be it here for this week. We appreciate everybody who joined us and made us part of their week. We will see you next week on Born on the Bayou Sports.